Hey! Happy Saturday morning, you beautiful radio listeners. Hope you're having a wonderful start to your weekend. Let's check in with the most important man looking very confused, Will Darkins. What's going on, man?
Does this sound faster than usual?
Yes, very.
Doesn't it?
I was trying to figure out. I think I actually went faster unknowingly. I thought you were looking at me. I was like, I did that pretty quick.
Doesn't this?
This sounds considerably
This sounds
faster.
very quick. Let me see this.
Yeah.
What is
Something
going
is-
on right now?
I thought you were looking at me because I was going fast. I feel like I
No.
am definitely going a little quick on that.
Are we on drugs?
Maybe. I was reading a book called River of Consciousness about the human brain by Oliver Sacks. And it's kind of the
Nerd.
Yeah. It was a book that he wrote. They kind of finished posthumously, but it's a guy that studied the brain his entire life, and he was talking about how people with Tourette's syndrome, they think that during their some of their glitchiness and when their brain goes like full hyperspeed,
Yeah.
they think they're going normal speed. So all of these twitches and all of these things, they will see the world around them moving incredibly slow, and they feel that they're moving at full speed. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's some other brain disorder that causes it. But they'll have people sitting in his waiting room waiting to talk to him. And it looks like they're just holding their arm like in the middle of space. So imagine somebody sitting down and holding their arm. And then those people will think they're moving at regular speed. And if you do slow motion photography on them, it'll look like they're just reaching up and scratching their nose and putting it back down. It is the extremes of it. But maybe our brains are just broken in the same way at the same time, and it feels like it's going faster, and everybody thinks we're talking like chipmunks.
That's
We're
right.
talking
Everyone
real
thinks
quick.
we're talking like chipmunks because we're here on the radio talking about sports. Portland sports, in fact.
Did we also go back to the 1920s?
That's what I associate
Yeah, when you
with
talk
people
fast,
who
it's back
speak quickly.
Well, I don't know.
How about those Trailblazers? They've been winning a lot of games. This is an all-star break right now. They're not playing basketball.
One of the great basketball games. Yeah, not a single Blazer playing in the All-Star break.
It's a shame they're not playing. Well, I guess we'll see next year if they will play next year.
Yeah, well, you're very excited about the Blazers. You've watched 0 games, except for the opening game of the season.
I don't need to.
All right, well, nobody said you need to. Here's the thing, Will.
Damn it.
Here's the thing, Will. You don't need to watch any sports.
I don't?
No, you
Oh.
don't. You don't have to do any of it whatsoever. How many people watched the Super Bowl last weekend?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't even check that number. What is it? 60.
Sure, let's just say it's
800
6
trillion or whatever.
Let's say it's 60 million. How many people live in this country?
How many people live in the U.S.?
Yeah.
500 million, maybe?
I think it's like 3.5, or 350 million. Either way.
How
If there's
many people?
let's say there's 300 million, and if 60 million people watch, you can pull up the ratings while you're at it. But that's not even the majority of people watching the Super Bowl. Just in our orbit, we think everybody watches that game. You don't need to watch any sports, Will. So why do we watch the Blazers?
Well, how will I keep this job?
Hope.
That's
I don't
pretty
know.
crazy. 334 million
Okay, so
people live
that's
in the
close.
United States. 127 million watch the Super Bowl. No wonder people pay that much for advertising.
But still, that's less than half. I mean, it's crazy, and it's a crazy amount of people.
It's a lot of people.
But so on Super Bowl Sunday, more than half the country doing something else.
It's kind of odd, though, isn't it? That, like, we all kind of coalesce around this one football event. Like, I mean, I know us as sports fans.
Is that a global number of how many people watch? Because they watch it in other countries. What I would love to do is I'd love to be in like Australia, if they do like an Australian broadcast where they're still speaking English, but they're explaining how the game works to everybody that's watching. So what they're going to do here, it's not like Aussie rules, and they keep explaining the game. I think that would be delightful.
He's going to put his hands under his nuts right there, and I'm going to take the ball.
Is that your Aussie accent?
Yeah, I don't really have a good one.
I say we go back to the 1920s. That was
what about my South African accent,
Yeah,
which
it's great.
everybody loves?
Yes, go ahead.
Huh? That's right.
It's very good. It's very good. We can go to South Africa and watch the game. And they're explaining, but wouldn't that be fun to watch a
Yeah,
game?
Patrick Mahomes throws the ball, huh?
They'd probably just put on the American broadcast. But like, if you could go alternate broadcast and get like have you ever watched the Nickelodeon cast? I guess I've never watched SpongeBob. Is he explaining how football works to people?
No, they don't do that. So they'll usually
They just
So
put
it's
in a
owned by
bunch of
Paramount,
animation
right?
stuff. I don't know. I've never
Or
watched it.
Viacom, whatever it is. So it's the same company that's
Yep.
owned by like CBS that owns Nickelodeon. And so what they'll do is they'll get gentle CBS talent to do those games, and it's usually
Like Nate
Burleson.
Burleson.
Yeah, it's usually him. And so they will explain some of the rules of football
But it is for a younger audience, and it is for
Yeah,
a less
yeah.
football educated audience.
Well, it's kids.
Yeah.
It's not even less educated football
Well,
audience
I
because they
just meant-
explain it to you like a child, which
I-
perhaps that helps. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
But it's with the softness of a child. See,
Yeah.
he's gonna come over. He's gonna grab him. And he's gonna put him to the ground.
well, I want to see the Australian one where they're like, "What is with this game here? What are they doing? Why do they keep making these stops?" And they got to get in all their advertisers, Greg. Ah, that makes sense. And so, yeah, like explaining the game, like, what is going on right now?
All
What are
right.
they?
And for whatever reason, let's go to our South African correspondent on the field. Oh, they're tugging each other out.
Very good. Very, very good.
Did you watch the Super Bowl?
I did watch a Super.
Oh.
Did you watch the entire Super Bowl?
I watched parts of it.
Oh, really?
I'll tell you what.
Please
I'm
tell
not
me.
gonna lie. After that offensive pass interference call, I turned it off for about 10 minutes.
Did you really?
I was so distraught by that.
Were you just watching at home by yourself? I assume that your wife does not care, and your child.
Yeah, she watched it. I mean,
Yeah, but like when you shut it off, she was like, "What are you doing?"
oh no, I
Yeah.
mean, just you
Look,
know,
she's-
my mom came over and they wanted to watch the halftime show.
Sure.
And yeah, I just had it on, and then after that call, I was like, I really don't want to watch this, and I turned it off. And then like I kind of got bored after 10 or 15 minutes. I was like, well, let's just see what's going on.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, it's
Yeah.
interesting.
That was quite the beatdown.
Yeah. Was it a waste of time, the
No.
Chiefs 2024-25 season?
In their minds, I think there's probably
It
some
was
of
kind
that.
of a waste of time, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, they are like we always say. We always say this team is Super Bowl or bust. When you've won 2 straight, it's Super Bowl or bust. So yes, it's a very disappointing season. But I think they made it a lot further than anybody expected them to, based on what they had done in the previous year, where they just held on. Then they go out there and just barely win these games. I think everybody
Yeah.
was expecting Baltimore or Buffalo
Yeah.
or another representative from the AFC, and you got the Chiefs again. I think it was a great season for a team that, I don't know if I was rooting for them to witness greatness, but I wanted a good game. But at the same time, I wasn't disappointed with the result. If the Chiefs did that same thing to the Eagles, that game would have stunk. But watching the Eagles go out, they said the Chiefs.
Why would it stink?
I don't know. It just wouldn't have been. It wouldn't have had the same entertainment value watching a team that's been there before. The game plan that the Chiefs put in place was, all right, Jalen Hurts, we're going to make you beat us. And if he floundered and looked like Patrick Mahomes did, where he was just getting pressure on him every play without a blitz and just really couldn't do anything. If that happened to Jalen Hurts, I would have felt bad for him. I didn't feel bad for Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has already won 3 Super Bowls. He's got the MVP. He's got all the accolades. He's got everything that a guy could want. For Jalen Hurts to go out there and do what he did in that game, he was great. And he deserved every bit of that MVP, even though they could have given the whole defense an MVP, and I'd have been fine with that. Jalen Hurts,
the offensive line, the MVP.
either way, Jalen Hurts was great in that game. The offensive line was great in that game. The defense was great in that game. The Eagles looked like what they were forecasted was the most talented team. It was great for Nick Sirianni, who was a guy who should have been fired after the opening press conference, who had a team that was playing great last year and they tanked at the end. For Saquon Barkley, who went out and decided to leave and take probably less money that he could have gotten somewhere else to go back to Pennsylvania, where he had so much success in college, and win that and being perfectly happy being the distraction. It was. I thought it was. I ended up liking the Eagles more after the game than I did before. Not because they dominated, but the way that they won wasn't the formula where it was. I think it was Dirt and Sprague that were having the conversation. Well, can they win if Saquon doesn't get to 100 yards? Well, they did. Did anybody expect the headline being Saquon held to 57 yards on the ground and Kenny Pickett put in late for Jalen Hurts? in Eagles romp of the Chiefs.
Now, the first part of it I could have predicted, and I think the Eagles probably did predict, and I think that's also a massive reason as to why they won
Yeah.
the way they did, which is they went to the drawing board preparing for this Super Bowl, and they go, look, this Chiefs defensive line is probably top 3 we'll face all season.
Yeah.
They are going to key in on what makes this offense great, which is running the ball, running the clock, play action, and huge bang plays, right? Like Saquon Barkley first run from scrimmage NFC title game type of plays.
Yep.
And I think the gamble they made, which was a safe gamble because it kind of made sense. And now when I'm retrospectively looking at this, I was kind of like, yeah, actually, we should have seen this coming, was they go, I think our offensive line's better than their defensive line.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think their defensive line's exhausted, and it's shown in film up until this point, and we're not.
Yeah.
Because we really haven't played anybody of consequence, quite honestly. We
They
played
had
the
a much
Rams.
easier path. Well,
Yeah,
the
we
Packers,
played
Rams,
and
and
we played the Packers
Commanders.
that was nothing. We played
Yep.
the Rams who were exhausted. We played the Commanders who were just
in a
not ready
snowstorm
yet.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just weren't there yet.
Yep.
They were too young. And so now we're at this point where we're incredibly well rested, and our offensive line not only is good, but they're experienced, which means there's no thing of like, ooh, are we too, is the stage too big? No, we've been here before. We know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so they go, okay, they're going to stop Saquon Barkley. That's fine. What we're going to do is
But they keep. The other thing they did was they kept running Saquon too. They
Yes.
ran him 25 times,
We're gonna
which was brilliant.
we're going to commit to the running game
That way
as
they
it
have-
is.
that-
We're
that
not
way-
going to do that.
We're not
But
going to let them change their defense.
We're not going to let it deter us from doing what we want, which is continue to run the ball. And honestly, he didn't even really have that bad of a game because every time he ran
Totally.
the ball, he got like 3 yards,
Well, he
which
got-
is fine.
And he ended up getting another 40 in the passing game.
Yeah.
And the other thing that the Eagles did was they said not only is our offensive line great, we have a quarterback that we trust, and we have really good weapons out there. Devontae
great
Smith
receivers.
and AJ Brown both had huge catches.
And the tight end's great.
And
Goddard.
Dallas Goddard's great
Yeah.
too. Yeah, so they went our weapons against it. We can win games this way. The one narrative that is throwing me off is all Jalen Hurts does is win. No, he hasn't
Right.
won the big game. He literally got benched when he was at Alabama and then got shipped out of town for that. Like he hasn't had somebody that trusted him enough to finish a game and do that. He now has the 2 best rushing performances from the quarterback position in Super Bowl history, and now you can say that he is the guy for the moment. He was the worst quarterback of 37 qualified starters that under pressure this year. He was not great in every big moment that he's ever been in, but I think he can shake a lot of that off with the performance that he had. And the Eagles, by all accounts, should be in this position again next year and maybe the year after. But at the same time, this may be their one shot too. You just never know whether it's health
Yeah.
or re-signing. I don't know how safe.
Well, and chemistry, I think,
Yeah,
is
totally.
probably going to be their biggest adversary heading into the next
Certainly was
season.
last year, right?
It was this year, too. I mean,
Yeah.
they had a lot of issues. A.J. Brown is, from all accounts, mentally unstable. Like,
Whoa!
well, he is. He's screaming at dudes on the sidelines. He's
So did
trying
Tom
to
Brady.
He's trying to read a I guess philosophical self-help book
Sure.
to help him calm down.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's a little something. Nick Sirianni's job is constantly
he's a
in
crazy
question.
dude, which is
Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
crazy dude. There's questions that you could keep your you're losing your offensive coordinator, but like that you could keep your defensive coordinator. He might leave for more money. Who
I think
knows?
Fangio's pretty well established.
I suppose, yeah.
That's what they've said. Just reports.
But you have a lot of uncertainty on this team, and then also to your point, what you were just talking about with Jalen Hurts is the fact that he played incredibly well in the Super Bowl, and that he should get all the credit for that.
Yep.
Really, he was the Super
He
Bowl.
literally
MVP.
got a trophy for it.
Yeah, he should. But
And he did.
the bulk of work around that isn't as good.
Yep.
And you have to question, would this have happened this way if you didn't have a generational running back on your roster?
Sure.
And you also have to question, how lucky can we get another year with this guy not getting significantly hurt?
Yeah.
Because he seemed to be spared his history, which is Saquon gets hurt a lot.
Well, the other
And
thing
this
too is
one year he did not.
the way Jalen Hurts plays quarterback too, him staying healthy as well. Because
Yeah.
remember how many games did he miss with that concussion mid-late season this year, and has a little bit of the I'm not afraid of contact Cam Newton, Josh Allen built into him as well. I mean, he's in Super Bowl lore. He will always have the MVP trophy. It was a great finish to a great season. But the other thing is people are like, oh, just blowouts in the Super Bowl. They can't all be nail biters. Every once in a while, you're going to have games like this. I'd much rather have it go the Eagles' way if that's the type of game that you're going to get. But it's also probably me just validating enjoying the game. I really enjoyed not only the game, the company that we had there was great. The nachos, the whole thing. It was an absolute lovely day to sit back and watch football, and it was a great culmination to what I thought was a great NFL season.
Yeah.
What? Josh Allen wins the MVP. The emergence of Jaden Daniels.
I thought the Chiefs wasted everyone's time. That's kind of what I thought.
But you have
you
to
win almost
knock
all of your regular season games by whatever point differential it was. Like
you're gonna get all
points.
that weight just to do that in the Super Bowl.
Yes, exactly. And then you play this incredible game against the Bills, and it's like, wow, I think they're ready. And dude, I mean, I really don't want to undersell this enough. They looked horrible.
Yes.
Patrick Mahomes looked awful. Yes. I think you might have had a better shot with Carson Wentz in there. That's how bad he looked.
They should have.
Seriously,
he did look terrible.
Horrible. Well, I have never seen a quarterback in my lifetime look. I've watched Cam Newton in the Super Bowl, and that looked slightly better than what I watched Patrick Mahomes do. Is there an injury we're hiding or something?
Well,
I don't know, because quite honestly, I have never seen a flip like that.
Yeah.
To look like that in the AFC title game, and then to come out and look like I don't know, like Kenny Pickett.
I'm trying to remember if I
horrible.
Well, okay. So the Super Bowl this reminds me of is the Seahawks and Broncos from the the runaway
the narratives.
That and you just the record-setting Denver Broncos offense were never in that game, but I don't remember having that same feeling where it was like, wow, the Broncos just looked. It was just like.
They looked horrible.
Well, of course they did.
Yes.
Anytime you get your ass kicked, you looked horrible.
Dude, do you remember the first play from scrimmage?
Yes, the snap over his head. but again, when you are in the avalanche and everything you do is wrong and everything they do is right, everybody looks terrible. The offensive line looks terrible. The quarterback looks terrible. All the receivers, the defense, the special teams, everybody looks terrible. And so I guess when it's that way, I don't put a lot of it on Mahomes, because once you're down by 27 in that first half or whatever it was, like, everybody knows what you're doing. Your line can't stop anybody. Good luck. It was kind of a like, all right, we all know what you have to do, and it hasn't worked yet, so why is it going to work now? I just thought that was way more about the Eagles being great than the Chiefs being terrible. And when the game gets out of control, you don't really have any answers. Andy Reid always has a perfect play at the end of a close game. Nobody has a perfect play at the end of a butt whooping like that.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Okay. All right.
But also, like, the coaching staff too.
All right.
It was horrible.
It was bad. The whole thing was well, when nothing works.
Awful.
It's
when
always
nothing works. Run the ball.
Why? You're down 27.
Who cares? Passing's not working.
But neither did run.
It keeps not working. Dude, no. When they ran the ball, it at least kind of worked.
In the first half, when they ran the ball, how many yards did they have?
I don't know. It had to be more than passing.
They had fewer yards than the Eagles had points in the first half. That was.
Well, that was also due to sacks and
and the Eagles had more first downs than they had yards. They had more points than they had yards. It was just an.
Also, is there a thought that perhaps?
Let's talk more Super Bowl.
Okay.
We'll take a quick hiatus. It's the end of the NFL season. There is no more football until spring games, and I ain't excited about that. We'll continue with the 2024-25 NFL season and the culmination when we continue. Sinner and Saint on 1080 The Fan. kind of dig that. The real soft ones, see if anybody's really paying attention, then do it at full volume. I was wondering how you're going to come back from that snafu of not turning that all the way up.
Yeah.
I'm looking at some NFL stats, and I thought this would be a little bit different. It's rushing and receiving league average per team. So all 32 teams. I was going to see where the rushing yards were this year. We're kind of doing a little NFL wrap-up if you're just joining us. The Super Bowl was obviously the greatest game ever played by just the Eagles, and the Chiefs were not present. But I was trying to figure out what the narratives were, but the rushing yardage was one of the things that I was going. So I was seeing if I could find the full stat of rushing yards by team by game. And maybe I'll have to dig a little bit deeper, but the total rushing yards per game this season, do you care to guess if you take the average for all 32 teams combined? Does that make sense?
How many rushing yards there were?
Yeah, rushing yards per game by NFL or league average.
I don't know, 85.
119 yards per game.
All right.
Yeah. So last year it was
Quite a bit.
Yeah, last year was 112. In 2022, it was 121 though. So that was the one that kind of threw me off. But the average over the last however many years is it's 2022 is well ahead, and then this year pretty significantly higher. The lows were in the mid 2010s, 2015, 16, and 17, around 108, 109 yards per carry. 1999, surprisingly, 106 yards per carry. So I just kind of glancing at that because it was kind of a resurgence of the running backs. Because if you look at the stat leaders for the year, Saquon Barkley, of course, over 2,000 yards. Derrick Henry, 1,900 yards. First guy ever to have two 1,900-yard seasons. Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, and Jahmyr Gibbs all over 1,400 yards rushing. So it was kind of an interesting season from just the reemergence of the running backs, the emergence of some of these young quarterbacks. But I was thinking about it during the break. Like, who's going to be great next year?
Oh, I don't think that's a question you can ask right now, especially with the NFL.
I
just
know
don't
that's
think you
what's
can.
that's
Yeah.
exactly kind of what
I think
was
other
thinking,
sports
too.
you can kind of ascertain that at least a little bit. Like it was very easy at the end of last season to be like, Oklahoma City's going to be really good next year.
Yeah, Boston's going to be right there in the thick of things
Boston will
last
be
year after
fine,
winning the
yeah.
championship. Denver's still going to be good with the best player on the planet. Yeah.
And you'll have maybe
The
one or two
Rockets and-
surprise teams, like say last year Minnesota. Though you knew they were going to be good, it was like, oh wow, they got that far.
Yep.
But the NFL, it's too difficult because, and this kind of goes into what I was wanting to say right at the end before you told us we had to break.
Yeah.
The hell is that?
Yeah, I know.
Not
Not like me at all.
no. Was that I felt like perhaps the Super Bowl might have been a blueprint for like, the Chiefs aren't really that good, and they're somehow winning these games because we haven't actually prepared for beating the Chiefs.
Fair enough.
And I think a way you can prepare for beating the Chiefs is to bolster your defensive line, obviously.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I'm not saying every team's got to do this because obviously every team with that statement will go, oh, really? Should I? Okay, I'll give that a shot. But if you're in division, you might go, okay, maybe we need to pay special attention to the defensive line. If I'm the Raiders and Pete Carroll just got to town and his specialty is defense, perhaps Pete Carroll is looking at the idea of playing Kansas City twice a year and going, do I want to start signing more defensive linemen and bolster that? Make that a priority. Make it so I get Sam Darnold in free agency and I go out and draft because I'm going to have high picks, the best.
Whoever the equivalent of Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith are would be a good place to start. Because that's the other thing about this defense is you've got guys that aren't getting paid yet, like top-tier defensive linemen that are playing like top-tier defensive linemen in their rookie, second, third season across the Philadelphia defense.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at the NFL draft, I mean, Abdul Carter is one of those game wreckers that is out there. And looking at him versus who's the best quarterback on the board? Should I get Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders? Get Abdul Carter.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the difficult part, too, about a team like the Raiders is the fact that...
Where are they picking, like 6?
No, they should be higher than
I
that.
don't think they are.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's where it gets a little difficult because you've got Titans, Browns, Giants, Jets.
6, you're right.
Yeah. Did
Yeah.
I have the first 4 right?
I don't know. I just saw an article that said Raiders pick 6.
I don't know.
Um,
All right.
yeah, and I think
I like
too,
how surprised you are that I was correct.
I think too, this whole idea of there's something to be had here with cracking the code against the Chiefs is that really when you look at the team as a whole, they are not that good. They have the best player on the planet, which obviously
Travis
is great.
Kelce.
Yeah. But you go along everything else and you go, well, they have one really good defensive lineman and a couple of good cornerbacks. The rest of the defensive line's fine. The offensive line is a creaky door that at left tackle finally flew off in the Super Bowl. You have 2 very good offensive linemen. That's kind of it. You don't have a running game really because the 2 running backs that you signed, one of which beat the living crap out of a woman in a hotel room, you fired and then brought back.
Yep.
And the other one, I guess is fine sometimes.
Well, he's just been chipped. He's been chipped out by most of this year and in recent years.
But then your receiving core is practically dead. Travis Kelce should be gone.
What?
He's not effective anymore. You have a bunch of aging stars on the outside. Hollywood Brown got hurt for most of the start of the season, and Xavier Worthy should have a good season next year, but it's going to take time to develop. So when you look at the Chiefs now, it's like, well, there's one thing we can do to actually beat this team or have a better chance of beating him is just bolster the defensive line.
Well,
do that because it looks like Patrick Mahomes is starting to kind of figure out that like, oh, if I don't have Tyreek Hill to throw the ball to just downfield wherever because he's 15 yards ahead of everybody, I'm going to run around in circles and eventually lose 10 yards.
Yeah, I think I feel what you're saying makes sense. The problem is Jalen Carter was a guy that was, dropped in drafts status because he was a potential problem. Philadelphia was willing to take a gamble on him.
Oh, he is a problem.
Yeah, he's a problem for offensive lines. But so having a guy like that fall in your lap, be willing to take the risk if you're Howie Roseman. That defense is constructed with a lot of young pieces. You have a guy like Zach Bond who comes out and is a practice team player who has an all-pro season is pretty unique. It just speaks, what you're saying speaks to the parity that the NFL is efforting towards, which is if you're going to pay Patrick Mahomes what he deserves and you're going to pay Chris Jones what he deserves, you have to make decisions on where you're going to be deficient. And that is why this season for the Chiefs was so maddening, entertaining, awful to watch all at the same time, which is they shouldn't be this good. They don't have enough weapons. They don't have enough blocking. They don't have enough defense. They don't have enough of anything, but they have managed to hold on by picking the right guys to overpay and the pieces around it. But it came to a crashing halt when you found a team that hit on every draft pick. If you go through the list of guys that Philadelphia hit on in the last 2 and 3 years, and this happens all the time when a young team wins a Super Bowl. You did it with the Seahawks and go, oh, look at all of the draft picks that they got, getting Cam Chancellor late and Richard Sherman late, and getting all of these guys. Oh, John Schneider is so brilliant. Pete Carroll is so brilliant. And then what happened was they stayed pretty good for a really long time, and they didn't really hit on guys like that again. And then they eventually fired Pete Carroll, and now they moved on from it. But having watched what happened over the decade, that could very easily happen to the Eagles. They should be a write-in for the playoffs for the next 10 years, but to win another Super Bowl, it's really, really hard. And to get guys that should get paid and deciding which guys to pay is going to be really difficult. And is Jalen Hurts as good as Russell Wilson? Because they paid Russell Wilson a lot of money, and they decided, oh yeah, we probably shouldn't have done that. And it worked out pretty well for Denver, and he's probably not going to be back in Pittsburgh next year. So could that be a very similar trajectory where you have the best defense in football and a good enough offense with enough weapons and the best offensive line in football? Because it does remind me a lot of the Seahawks' first Super Bowl win.
Yeah.
Highest paid offensive line, quarterback not getting paid anything, good weapons, best defense in the NFL.
And again, I think that this is more of a pointed question towards a division team.
Yeah.
I think if you are the AFC West, you are somebody in there.
Yep.
You look at what the Eagles did, and you go, we have to, on some level, recreate
Sure.
this.
I don't disagree.
We
with that.
have to, maybe it's not drafting, but, if we have cap space, like we have to just put it towards the defensive line.
And if
that's
you're the
it.
Kansas City Chiefs, you're going, do we get more weapons or do we get a better offensive line?
Oh, you have to get a better offensive line.
I would totally agree.
Because you've already dumped everything into the weapons themselves. I mean, what are you just going to keep playing on the Xavier Worthy rookie contract and then let that explode?
I don't know. But
guess what happened with Tyreek Hill?
But again, if you're the Chiefs, where would you rather spend money? You have two choices, and obviously it's more complicated than this. But if you could choose weapons or protection for Patrick Mahomes,
100%.
I totally agree.
How did Tom Brady last so long?
Protection. And
he had great offensive line.
Yep.
And he had great coaching.
Yep.
And so if you keep
and they let Dante Scarnecchia walk as their offensive line coach, and because he retired, and they went, "Can you please come back? Because we really had a bad. We need that." But that is the formula. So it's definitely interesting to watch.
I just felt cheated by
I get you.
the Kansas City Chiefs.
Well,
I thought it was
your
just
nacho bar probably wasn't
as good
as mine.
It was a waste of time. And nothing was more waste of time than when they barely beat the Panthers. That was the one that, for me, what was that, like week 14 or something, where they barely beat the Panthers. And I was like, why are we doing this? Like, you better blow everyone out in the playoffs. Like, you better.
Nobody deserved to get beat down more than the Kansas City Chiefs. And unfortunately, the first time they ran into a bully that was up for the task was the Super Bowl. Because if the Bills did that to them, you'd be screaming at the top of your lungs how great it was. The fact that
I would, because it would have been a better friggin' Super Bowl. God,
you hope so, but who knows?
I would think so.
Yes, you would. But if Philadelphia did that to Buffalo, it would have been way worse. Doing it to Kansas City, a chauvinistic parade of a football team that has already won it 3 times. It was overdue, and it was great. We'll talk about NBA All-Star Weekend, but first we need to get to a SportsCenter update.
All right, we got some NBA Hall of Fame or Basketball Hall of Fame.
Do you care about the Basketball Hall of Fame at all?
Kind of. Slightly. It's always interesting.
Who's the biggest slight? Like, who should be in that's out? Because, like, baseball, the biggest story is who's not in it.
And you know what's interesting, too? Yeah, I was about to say, I think that's solely a baseball thing.
It totally is. I
think baseball or basketball usually gets it right.
The NFL usually, but it's also the Basketball Hall of Fame, so it's which is just fine. If you could go visit any Hall of Fame, which would you go to?
Visit anyone?
Yeah.
Probably basketball.
Oh, see, the NFL one for me, it just has the most. Like, they don't care how bad of a guy you are. They don't care about anything. You get a football, you get it.
I think basketball would speak more to my my childhood nostalgia, because I was like obsessed with the NBA in the 90s and 2000s.
Yeah.
Anyway, Basketball Hall of Fame here. Carmelo Anthony, Dwight Howard. They headlined the group of finalists.
And so I saw a headline, and it didn't interest me enough to read it, but since you're bringing it up, they said something about the Redeem team getting in. Is it just members of that, or are they putting the whole Redeem team as a
I don't know.
unit in there?
The 2008 Olympic men's basketball team returned to its No, they don't really talk about that. Now, I thought it was kind of interesting. They're letting Dwight Howard in there.
He drug a mediocre Orlando team to an NBA Finals, and then was he part of...
I guess he was Defensive Player 3 years straight.
Yeah.
But so was Ben Wallace. So.
Yeah, was Ben Wallace in there? Ben Wallace was greatness.
Ben Wallace is probably in there, I would guess.
Just his hair should be in there.
Let's see. Hall of Fame. I would think he is. Ben Wallace, he was inducted in 21.
See, there you go. Yeah. Listen. If they can do it, just wait till Tumani Kamara wins his 3 straight Defensive Players of the Year.
Oh, no.
You have no idea how fun it is to watch Tumani Kamara because you don't watch the Blazers.
It's because it's a waste of time, my man.
Yeah, well, so was the Super Bowl, but you watch that hunk of garbage.
Hunk of meat. More sports scores and stories in 30 minutes. Will Darkins from the Fan Sports Desk. Listen live or on demand on the Odyssey app, the Fan's desktop player. Tell your smart speaker to play 1080 The Fan.
Aloha, Portland sports fans. It's Marcus from the 808. Brah, you know what I do when I get tired from the day-to-day? I hit up 808.
Saint.
Did you really think that after absolutely blowing your butt out in game 1? Did they blow their butt out? Yes, they blew their collective butts out to try to get that win.
Their weekly mission to provide hot takes, medium takes, mild takes, to boldly go where no show has gone before.
Take me to Flavortown.
Luke Anderson,
You're welcome. You're welcome, world.
Will Darkins,
I know what you're thinking. What will the butt test tell us that the nose test didn't?
the Sinner and the Saint Tailgate Show on 1080 The Fan, the
Odyssey.
map,
It's just turned into a gigantic Mexican.
and 1080thefan.com.
Hour 2! If you missed anything from hour 1, shame on you. Try to be better. But don't worry, podcast available, Odyssey.com, Odyssey app, 1080thefan.com. We're very excited to announce our new sponsor. It is now sponsored by the Saudi government, which will make us very, very wealthy. But you're no longer allowed to drink when you listen to the podcast.
And if you do, we'll find you.
They will find you. We're not enforcing that.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that you're part of the task force, but really, yeah. So you might want to be careful with that. So somebody on the Vancouver Ford text line does say about so if you missed good versus evil, the Saudi government has said that there will be no drinking allowed at the 2034 World Cup.
Correct.
So the year. Somebody's on the Vancouver Ford text line. F around and find out breaking Saudi laws. Yikes. That's kind of the feeling that I've got.
The risk is not worth it if I'm a huge football fan and I want to go to that thing. I'm just like, it's cool. I'll watch it from my house.
Yeah, I don't know. There's the thing that gets me is there's people that have been to every World Cup game or whatever since they were born, and you've got like the fan traditions around the world, and we're on the other side of the world and I don't think we care that much. But if you're a European country where you don't have to go all that far geographically to get there, and your team has a favorite in the World Cup, and to miss it when you finally have a chance to break through, it's easy to say from here.
Yeah.
But
I hear it.
I don't know. It just feels like a recipe for disaster.
Yes.
Okay. Well, stay tuned. 9 years away. 9 years away.
Will we be on air at that time?
Ooh, God.
In 9 years?
I don't know. I mean,
I don't think we'll get canceled for ratings because I think we're that inconsequential. But I think we'll do something consequential enough that they'll be like, "Look, we have to. The lawyers told us. Like we can't not."
Well, listen. The people that heard the things that you said, there's no coming back from that. It's just
apparently.
I'm sorry. I don't know. At that point, I might be all in on the show because my children will have no interest in anything that I do at that point. So it'll just be. I imagine my wife will probably be the same way. She'll just be like, "All right, just get out of the house. Just go and do something."
So you'll actually put effort into the show.
Like the show might,
and
be
it'll
better.
get worse.
Oh, that's probably a fair point. Yeah, I
remember I tried that once, and the show got worse.
You were very tryhard when we first
tried
started.
very hard,
this.
and the
You
show
did.
was terrible.
Yeah, it was. It was a rough go.
Yeah.
And it was not only was it terrible from the outside, but like internally, it was really terrible.
Horrible.
I remember all of the comments we got from the catering staff and our masseuse that and I know what you guys are thinking. It was not a Justin Tucker, Deshaun Watson thing. He just was so demanding of that they follow the rules. It was actually the opposite of that.
Correct.
It made it so just uncomfortable for everybody.
Yeah.
It was a lot. But
That's right.
You have relaxed. You've loosened up over the years, and it has paid dividends. So you're right. Maybe if we go try hard, that will have a negative impact on the show. So I had not considered that, but either way. The good news is we'd probably stay on the clock.
I guess.
Well,
what do we have to break now, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's probably
Should we?
the wise thing to do. So if you listen to this show this time last year, was the end of the NFL season, the beginning of college basketball madness that, let's be honest, nobody really cares about. Until we actually get into the tournament and people pick brackets, there's nothing to care about. So what we did this time last year was we helped Will Darkins pick a baseball team to follow, and I think it ended up being a lot more impactful on your sports fandom than even you expected it to be. So we will go into season 2 of Will as an Orioles fan and see where he's sitting with that. We'll do that next. It is The Sinner and the Saint on 1080 The Fan.
So, how's your research going?
Surprising! After I figured out the top-rated TVs in our price range, I went shopping for deals.
And who's the best?
It wasn't the internet, and it wasn't the warehouse club.
But
It was video only. They had better deals on the Samsung, LG, and the Sony TVs that got the highest scores.
better than online and at the club?
I know! Video only beat them all. And now we can afford an even better model for the same price. My research really paid off.
If we buy it video only.
Exactly. Otherwise, we'll be sorry.
At Video Only, you won't find huge stores with refrigerators or microwaves.
weekend. I mark this down. Okay.
Let's talk about the pitchers and catchers then. Let's have
Pitchers
a
are
little
right,
look.
This is time of year. We're going down to nice weather. Grapefruit League starting in Florida. The Cactus League starting out in Arizona. It's going to be a great time, everybody. We're really going to enjoy it. Yeah, I think it's better. I think this is better. Pulled up the off-season grades for Major League Baseball teams. I pulled up the projected win totals, and I projected the Major League Baseball salary, total payroll for some of these teams, just out of curiosity. So looking at the offseason, I think everybody agrees that the Los Angeles Dodgers are the team to beat. They had the perfect offseason. They took care of all of their needs by adding every single pitcher that ever beat them and the highest priced pitcher from Japan. But still, they only sit second in total payroll for the 2025 season. They're going to spend $313 million. But that is second to the $320 million the Mets are going to spend. And I do not see a direct correlation to win totals for the Mets, but it does show that the World Series champion Dodgers are expected to win 102 games out of 162 next year. So a bit of a bar. But the Mets are projected to finish third in the National League East. How do you spend $321 million on your active roster and expect to win 89 games? Because you're the Mets.
Yeah.
That is something else. So
the
third
Mets, you have horrible injury history.
It's just
You're
being
a
the
team.
Mets.
Yeah, I know. You're a team that didn't click until late, and even when you did, it was kind of inexplicable. I
Yeah.
don't know.
So the win totals for the NL East, just to give them to you really quickly, the Philadelphia Phillies, who are the third in spending, are expected to win 91 games. And then Atlanta, they have them a notch above New York, but the same win total. Atlanta, then New York, both with 89 wins expected. Washington, 73. Miami, 63. Who cares about Miami? The Dodgers expected to win 102. Everybody else expected to win in the 80s in that division, except for the Rockies, who won 61. The bottom of the barrel, the White Sox. Care to guess the expectation for the Chicago White Sox in 2025?
So, what, they won 15 or 20 games or something?
They won a game last year.
I mean, I know they set the record for least amount of wins in a season. I think probably their I mean, this is the hard part. They really should be better. All the young players they had have another year of experience.
Yeah.
I don't know how much worse you can get than. What was their win total last year?
I don't
Wasn't
have it in
it
front of
20
me.
games or something?
No, I don't know. Let's check.
Hold
It was higher than that.
White Sox win total 2024 41.
40,
Okay.
41.
So they had 41 wins. I mean, I don't know, 55,
52.
52.
Pretty good guess.
Yeah.
Pretty good
I mean,
guess.
they should be better.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Now, if they're even worse than that, then
Yeah.
we're having other conversations. But yeah, why they were so bad was because they were so young and they just basically had no chemistry whatsoever. And the
Yep.
team really wasn't built all that well.
The other thing that happened
yeah.
last year was that the Central was really good. Like every team was,
It was good.
Every
Yeah.
team was pretty good. Win total expect for the AL Central are going to be 86 for Detroit, 84 for Kansas City, 82 for Cleveland, and 80 for Minnesota. So you've got teams that inexplicably, like Detroit, ended up as a playoff team because they just kept winning, even though they sold at the trading deadline. Cleveland and Minnesota there as well. At the end, Kansas City expected to be better. So part of it is you play a lot of games against teams that are good. So those win totals not elaborately high. The New York Yankees, who just abhor the fact that that nobody can spend with the Dodgers because they're the Yankees, which I still is one of my
Hilarious.
favorite offseason quotes from this year. Expected to win 94 games. Your Baltimore Orioles 87, Toronto 83, Boston 83, and Tampa Bay 78. How do you feel about that for your team now that you are a big time Baltimore Orioles fan?
Well, to say that the offseason hasn't been slightly disappointing would be a understatement because it has.
Yeah.
Look, there was no realistic chance that we would be able to re-sign Corbin Burns, and that wasn't even from a financial standpoint because as it was revealed later on, Burns obviously had his pick, right? He could pick whoever he wants. He's a certified ace. He had an incredible season this past year, and he's really, really good. What came to be the instance was that he actually wanted to be closer to his wife and kid who originate from Arizona. And so he was willing to work with Arizona to actually take slightly less money than he was offered other places just to say, like, hey, I want to fit it. He's probably, for the length of the contract, he's probably going to finish his career out there. And he said, I just wanted to be closer to them. That's what's important to me at this point in my career.
Good for him.
I want to do that. Which, whatever. That's fine. Again, didn't think we honestly had a chance of re-signing him. So instead of going out and trying to replace him in some respect, because it would be very difficult otherwise, we go out and get Charlie Morton, who's very old, still good, but very old.
A lot of old guys getting paid in that $15 million range around the league, and Verlander and whoever else. Yeah.
We get a guy from Japan who, Sugano, who is very good in that league, though he has had no major league experience, which is a wild card. Established pitcher, he's going to handle himself pretty well, but like, how will the beginning of the season look for him would be my question. You then go out and I forget the other pitcher we got's name.
But projected to finish second in a division with the New York Yankees, who are, they're always going to try to add talent to it. I mean, I think you have to feel pretty good about that. I mean, you didn't lose anything too significant. You still have youth. You fired your entire hitting staff.
Yeah.
So bring somebody in. Bring somebody in who can go, hey guys, we should hit like all season. Maybe just do that. Like when it matters most.
After the All-Star break,
when it matters most,
horrible.
maybe we try to get better instead of way worse.
Yeah, I think just the pitching is going to be a concern. Let me rephrase that. We'll know if pitching is a concern probably 30 games in.
Okay. Yep.
Because we don't really have a true ace. Probably the best pitcher on our staff, our starting pitcher on our staff right now is Eflin, Zach Eflin, who we got from the Rays at the trade deadline last year, who proved to be very good. He's incredibly efficient. And he was great. He just rolled into our starting lineup and it was awesome. Now, last season, there was a stretch for about 15 games where it looked like we would definitely win the World Series. And the reason was, the reason was because
I like that it was definitely.
I
could tell it was your first year as a baseball fan. Because there are stretches where
here was the stretch. And the reason it didn't work out is because injuries.
Sure.
We had Burns, who all season pitched great. We had Kyle Bradish, who came back and was pitching insane. We had John Means, who came back from injury, was pitching insane. Grayson Rodriguez, who was in his second year, was pitching insane. And they were all starters. And the offense was still keeping up.
Yeah.
So there was like a 15-game stretch where we won like 12 games in it, where it was just kind of like, well, if that stays even slightly the same, I don't see us, unless there's a catastrophe, which there was one, veering from that. So what I would say is I don't think the pitching situation is as dire as a lot of the fan base kind of feels like it is. We do get Felix Bautista back, who was our closer 2 years ago, who had to get Tommy Johns.
Yeah.
We suffered greatly because of Craig Kimbrell last year in closing. We also have Sir Anthony Dominguez as another closer who we got the trade deadline last year, who proved to be pretty good down the stretch. So I'm willing to wait it out, see what happens. I think Grayson Rodriguez will be much better than he was even last year before his injury. Eflin's great. It'll be okay.
Well, your team and my team sit 15 and 16 in spending. So the Baltimore Orioles are 15th. They spent $150 million. Mariners spent $140. They are 16th on that list.
Also, we got a new owner last year.
Yep.
And that's another thing that's kind of like some of the fans are pissed off because it's like, this guy's supposed to be a billionaire. He's not the Angelos, who are historically cheap.
Well, you have middle of the road off-season grades, kind of universally as I see them. The nice thing is the Seattle Mariners have Fs across the board, and among the worst off seasons, I've seen them placed second to last on one list of the worst failings in the off season. This is a very young pitching staff with a ton of talent. Their home road splits are dangerous for you because that is the worst place to hit in Major League Baseball. The park effect. It does not make the Big Pink look very good. But in the American
ballpark,
in the American League West, it is Texas 86 expected wins, Houston 85, Seattle 85, Oakland 73, and the Los Angeles Angels, which no matter what they do, They just stink, and they are projected to have 70 wins.
Which makes me believe you guys will actually be very competitive for the
Right in the middle of it. I mean,
You should be.
Yeah, but same thing. Same thing goes for Baltimore. I mean, looking at these teams, I mean, the teams in the 85 plus win category. So the 3 teams that I just mentioned in the American League East, the only team in the Central expected to win more than 85 is Detroit. Again, it's going to be attrition playing against other good teams. The Yankees and Orioles. So there's 7 teams in the American League that are expected to win 85 wins or more, and the Seattle Mariners are among them. So they're definitely in the top half of the American League. It's whether or not they can live up to that. They've won more than 50% of the games in 3 of the last 4 years, but they have been on the outside looking in all but 1 as far as the playoffs go. So can you get in there? You have the staff to do it. You've got a young superstar in Julio, or at least we expect him to be. At some point, you've added in pieces that are supposed to do X, Y, Z, though, for the last however many years, and they haven't been able to do it. This offseason, you didn't really make any moves. So hopefully, if they have one of these, I'm going to use air quotes, great farm system, somebody can come up and be an impact player. That's what you would expect to see. So maybe, the organization knows more than the people that are reporting on them, and there are some people that we'll see pop in spring that can come up and make an impact on this team because they didn't do anything to add to it. But the last few years they have, and it hasn't worked out. So what do you do?
Why won't you guys give us one of your pitchers?
I'm happy. I like the idea of changing pitching for hitting, but again,
It sounds like you're asking for too much.
I think you should ask for a lot. That's the thing is, if you are giving up the fewest amount of runs in baseball, you need to score the fewest amount of runs in baseball. The problem is you need to figure out who those guys are, and going out and trading for somebody that hits well in Baltimore, bringing them to Seattle where they don't hit well, is going to be very difficult to re-sign them. So historically what happens with this...
but we have, we literally... we are... And this is what's made me mad about my team, and perhaps maybe I'm just not viewing this as clearly as I should.
Possible.
Which is, everybody is on rookie deals for a long time.
Yep.
Like Jordan Westberg is the guy you guys should
under
go
team
for.
control. Yeah, I wouldn't.
Yes, I mean he'll be under team control for I think 4 more years or something.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get 4 years of this guy, and if he plays really well, you'll probably have a good chance of re-signing him.
Yeah.
We also have a farm system that's really great that you can pilfer from. But I've also heard that basically anytime the Orioles interact in trades with teams, because we've tried to do this, especially this offseason when we tried to go after an ace, teams will literally just try to pick the pocket.
Yeah.
And they'll go, we want all of it. It's like, well, we're not going to give you all of it.
Well,
we'll give you some.
Well, and then what happens is if you get to the trade deadline and you are desperate for a pitcher, the NBA trade deadline is really funny to me because everybody's going, oh, these teams need to make a move or whatever. They don't. When you have 5 guys on the court at a time playing both sides of the ball, you can really disrupt chemistry, I think, really quickly in the NBA. And usually it's a desperation move there, but if you have young talent and you have assets, you don't really want to give them up if you don't have a chance at it. There's not a lot of teams, I think, that have a chance to win an NBA title this year. Baseball is completely different. There ends up being 10 teams that have a chance to win the World Series at the end of it. And if you get hot at the end of the year, it doesn't matter what you do for all, 100 games up to the trade deadline. But I think there really is an opportunity to fleece some people at the trade deadline. And I think that's what you do. Is if Baltimore is one of those teams that are like, we're missing one piece, that's where you're going to trade Luis Castillo and get value for him, is at the trade deadline. I don't think it's in the offseason.
Well, and I think, too, maybe people saw that we fleeced the Brewers, though it wasn't that much of a fleece because the Brewers ended up being fine, but that we got Corbin Burns for DL Hall, some other dude, and some cash, which was kind of Hall ended up being completely ineffective for them this last season. I don't even remember the other guy we gave up, but that was thought of as a holy crap, how'd they pull that off? So now basically when we're trying to go find pitching again, everybody's like, well, I'm going to want 4 of your guys.
Well, that everybody sees how good the young lineup is there. So it's it's a tricky thing when you're a general manager, I imagine, going, all right, we got this guy and he's outperforming even our expectations. We absolutely love him. He has so much value, but you overvalue him in your own system, and it becomes very difficult to move on from them. So it's just always a very tricky balance to kind of figure out. So,
What about your relievers?
who do you want?
I don't know.
And what are you gonna
Who
give
do you
up?
feel good about?
To be quite honest, I mean the starting pitching is so good that you you don't even want to mention the bullpen.
Oh, really?
Well, no, I mean I think all of the trade value is like Luis Castillo is a guy that is not on the same timeline as everybody else, so that's the name that keeps coming up.
Yeah.
But I think you can get a lot more for one of these guys. I mean, you had 3 guys that were in the top of whatever metrics you're looking at, and you just kind of go, all right, well, those are the guys that you feel like you can get a haul back for, but you just if you're trading relievers, it's going to be inconsequential. You need to get a much better lineup. You need run support. You need all that. So that's our baseball talk. It will be very exciting this year if both teams can end up hitting those win totals, because that means they'll be in it at the end, which is always makes things a lot more fun. We'll see what ends up happening. Next week we're not going to have a show because the Ducks are playing. Would you rather talk about college basketball or NBA basketball?
Anything else?
Next?
Anything else? Seriously, you could have after that said like analysis of CPM advertising rates.
Oh, do
I'd
you
go
wanna do-
that, please.
Do you want to talk?
Sure.
Do you want to talk CPM?
Let's do it.
Now let's talk about what we see for the final stretch of the NBA season. I know you haven't watched Blazers, but I assume you're paying attention to the league. There were a lot of moves at the trade deadline. There are teams going out and making changes. You and I haven't talked about the Luka trade in depth, so we'll talk NBA basketball, what we expect after the All-Star break. We do it next. Sinner and Saint. First, Sports Center update.
Some inconsequential Dolphins news, though. It's
Isn't all Dolphins news inconsequential?
Yeah, but it's kind of relevant in the way that
Since Dan Marino.
they're releasing Raheem Mostert, which was supposed to be part of this offense that was supposed to be unstoppable, which it was for
Yeah,
half
but
a
mostly wasn't the
season.
guy. A-Chan ended up being the better version of the same guy.
It's interesting because more than any other NFL team, I honestly feel like they're at a crossroads.
Ooh, more than any other team?
Kind of. I mean, the Jets always suck.
Yeah, that's not a crossroads. They stink.
The Dolphins are at this point where it's like you have this quarterback who basically has accepted he will die on the football field.
Yes, that's very
You
true.
have this coach who seems to know what he's doing, but maybe isn't a great leader. And you have this receiver who, at the end of last season, publicly came out and was like, I'm out of here. And then you're in a
but then he
division that's
apologized. He
kind
didn't
of up
apologize.
for. You're in a division where you can be. I mean, it's going to be hard to reach the Bills, but you can be very competitive in that division.
I'm going to go team most at a crossroads. Steelers.
Yeah, but that's just at one position.
Yeah, but
which I guess is the most important.
Yeah,
But they have
yeah.
everything else figured out. They have
Yeah,
the
but-
defense. They have weapons. Dude, the Dolphins. It's like
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know, but you have the third best quarterback, regardless of who plays quarterback. If you're the Steelers, do you go all in on a move to try to get somebody, or do you tank? Would you give up future draft assets for anybody in this draft? It's a weak quarterback draft. I don't know who the free agents are that you would go after. Would you sign Aaron Rodgers? How desperate are they?
Well, I would think they won't do that.
I would think that they wouldn't either. But
The Steelers don't seem to operate that way.
Justin Fields and Russell Wilson were your quarterbacks last year.
Yeah, but
Those
I mean,
Fields-
Justin Fields is a good
Yeah.
team guy.
No, I don't
Russell
disagree with
Wilson,
that.
I guess, is.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers is.
Yeah. Huh?
There's other factors than just the fact that.
But
he's
that's my pick for team most at the crossroads. They're too good.
That's a good.
They're too good to be bad, and they're too bad to be really good.
Yeah.
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 More sports scores and stories in 30 minutes. Will Darkins from the Fan Sports Desk. Listen live or on demand on the Odyssey app, the Fan's desktop player. Tell your smart speaker to play 1080 The Fan.
From Warren Allen, attorneys at law, I'm George McCoy, and when accidents happen, I'm the guy you deploy. Don't let insurance companies preserve their reserves. I'll get you what you deserve. If injuries and missing work are ruining your day, call George McCoy at Warren Allen.
throw in a team that's not in the playoffs and not in the playoff. Do you think Washington with 9 wins can turn it around and do something this year? No.
They might be one
It's so
of,
funny that they are still in single digits at the All-Star break. I don't know.
They might be one of the worst teams of all time.
Yeah, they're really, really, really terrible.
I mean, I know
9
obviously
and
last year
45.
we had the largest losing streak ever, but you know, the difference is that there was potential in the Pistons, and it's now showing itself. Yeah. Even last year when they were losing, you could watch those games and you could go, okay, I can see it. I know this looks horrible right now, but I see it. I know what they're doing. The Wizards,
Nobody knows.
No.
Nobody
It's
knows.
very confusing because I know they're in rebuild mode.
Yep.
But like you really shouldn't hit this low in rebuild. Like there is no hope on that team. They got Chris Middleton. I'm guessing to relieve some cap from the Bucks.
Well,
That's what that trade was, because otherwise, why did you give up your second best player?
Well, because
Kyle
he's
Kuzma.
not the future. Yes, you get an expiring contract and you get that.
I love that.
The
That's
fact
your
that you
second
could
best
barely
player,
even get through
Kyle
that.
Kuzma.
You could barely even get through that without a laugh.
You're second.
Well, I mean, yes. The good news is the only thing going bad in Washington right now is the Wizards. So everything else going great in that city. So that's fantastic. But yeah, I gave you the top 5. The Pacers got close last year. They don't seem to be as energetic, but they have won 6 out of their last 10. The other 3 teams at the top are all winning 8 of their last 10 in the Cavaliers, the Celtics, the Knicks. The Knicks seem to have won that trade with Minnesota again and again and again.
Yeah.
And then Milwaukee, I mean, shipping off Middleton, who has been inconsistently healthy, and having Giannis and Dame, and now, adding Kuzma to that as somebody that doesn't have to carry the burden and just be a shooter and a scorer. Are you giving them any credence out of those, or is it just we're waiting on Boston?
No, I mean, the hard part about Milwaukee is that you identified what the problem was, which was that Chris Middleton, while productive when he's on the floor, cannot stay on the floor.
Yeah, not reliable. Yeah.
He's also a defensive liability,
Reliability.
even when he is healthy. So your thought was, okay, look, we're pretty good right now, even as it is with Chris Middleton not playing much. So if we can somehow supplement him with diet Chris Middleton, which I guess is Kyle Kuzma, even though he's having a historically horrible 3-point shooting season, we can kind of stay on this track. And then once we get to the playoffs, we'll rely heavily on Giannis because Giannis wasn't there last year. So that, we didn't get a fair enough shake of Dame and Giannis in the playoffs, because that was the whole idea of getting Damian Lillard was that, look, I want somebody who is an offensive output who has playoff experience. So let's bring this guy in. And you didn't have both of them together in the playoffs. So I think that's what's going through their head is like, if we can just get in there and let Giannis loose and Dame can play younger than his years, we get a chance.
Well, the funny thing is, I think it's the same thing with Kuzma too. It's you pull in a guy and go, all right, you don't have to do it all. We've got Giannis and we've got Dame.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to do it all, but let's see if that formula actually works. So the East is intriguing. If we go to the West side of things, looking at Oklahoma City, Memphis, who I think is kind of a ton of fun to watch. Denver, Houston, and the Los Angeles Lakers. One team has been there before because the Lakers, as constituted, have not, even though the sum of their parts have. Clippers are your 6th seed right now. Timberwolves on the outside looking in with a very similar record to the Clippers. But I know that you love Oklahoma City, and they're 44-10, same as the Cavaliers with 10 losses and 44 wins. Do you feel like they're ready to take that next step? I mean, Shea is just ridiculous.
They're in incredible position to do so. Chet Holmgren's healthy now, though. He did get yammed on by...
Yes, he's on a poster now.
Yeah, he got
Ants
postered,
decided
which,
to...
whatever. But you're getting him back in the season. You're getting him back healthy when you most need it. Shea's probably going to be MVP, I would guess.
Feels like it's going that way.
Yeah, and you have a roster that from top to bottom has now become a better version than what it was last year. You're ranked, I believe, first or second in defensive efficiency in the NBA, which is a direct result of getting Caruso.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not, yeah.
Well,
among
it
other
is.
among other things.
Among
yeah.
other things,
Yeah.
but he's a massive reason to that. You have a team that faced their first real adversity last season.
Yeah. Nope.
And they faced that adversity against a team in the Dallas Mavericks at that time who was, ready for the moment. And so what you would hope is that what they learned from that will then translate into the playoffs. And I think they did learn something. I mean, they just kind of seem like the team of destiny for the West this year. That's what I would say. I think all the other teams, obviously Denver, you never know because...
Well, Denver, been there, done that.
Yeah,
so Denver's a team that I would be worried about. Memphis hasn't, but they play kind of a
and also the Thunder have
wild...
constructed their roster in a way that should answer all the questions you would have lobbed at you from the West. Can you take on Denver with size? Yes. Can you keep up with Memphis's speed and their scoring? Yes, you can. Are you going to win one-on-one battles if the Timberwolves, get up there and, you got to go up against Anthony Edwards? Yeah. So they've answered all the questions and the result looks to be correct. But as we saw from last year, will it translate into playoff success? And that's we got to see.
Well, and the biggest wild card, LeBron and Luka. I mean, it's an ultimate wild card. I mean, you had Luka drag a team that his Robin to his Batman was Kyrie Irving. LeBron is having a pretty damn good year for a guy that's 700 years old and has played more basketball than anybody in the history of basketball. I'm very curious what that looks like. I mean, they are solidly in the playoffs at 32-20. And you would expect them to get better. It looked pretty easy in the first outing, but they're playing Utah, so who knows? But that's one, sorry, I'm interested in Lakers basketball.
I'm interested in it, though. What I would say is, and I think the Lakers would probably tell you the same thing, is that real consequences won't come until next season. I think what they're doing right now is, I mean, really, I think what they're saying to themselves is, let's get him in here. Let's get Luka in here. Let's see what the chemistry is between he and LeBron and work that out this season. If we do make a big playoff run, that's great. But we're going to look to the offseason to sign some free agents, to draft, to kind of figure out this roster, to build it a little bit more. And in LeBron's last season, which probably will be next year, we will make the ultimate push.
Well, I would agree with that too, but I think I guess if you have LeBron James, you always have to make a push now. 30 games left. They got obviously hit pretty hard when the Mark Williams trade did not go through. They do the physical and just go.
Well, did
this
you
guy
hear about Connect?
No.
Connect basically is saying that he doesn't know if he can play yet because he's mentally effed from the idea that.
They didn't want him?
Yeah, they didn't want him.
What?
And then they were like, you got to come back. Yes.
What? Oh, come on. Get over it.
I'm serious.
Yeah, well, that's
I do love it.
He had a 37-point game, and everybody was so upset that the Blazers got Denny Advia. And they're like, oh, they could have had Connect if they would just stuck around in the draft. Oh, my gosh, he scored a bunch of points in one game. I mean,
I love it, too, because
he's obviously a player that has some impact, but he's pretty inconsequential.
At this trade deadline, also, they asked Nikola Jokic about all this. And I remember his quote was something to the effect of well, look, I mean, you're not leaving to do something else.
Yeah, exactly.
He's you still get to play basketball, which is why we're all doing this. You're just doing it at a different place.
Well, you didn't know that you could be traded.
Yeah.
What? Sorry, you have all the control in college. If that's
which I get it because you get ingrained somewhere, and I mean, I know it's Dalton Connect's rookie season, so that is kind of questionable. But
he's playing 20 minutes a game. He's get
but I get it. You get connected to a city and a fan base and everything. I just love that even Nikola Jokic is if I got traded, whatever. It's still basketball.
Yeah.
Like I'm not suddenly becoming an engineer.
Well, like Luca was like, yeah, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I'm a little upset. No, first thing he did was donated $500,000 to his new city. He's like, all right, well, let's get some things rebuilt. I work in Los Angeles now. See you later. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, very, very, very strange one. So so you have Boston and Oklahoma City in the finals. Is that what I heard?
Sure. Right now, why not?
Hey, 30 games left. The NBA home stretch after the All-Star break, the NBA gets really fun, and I still absolutely love NBA playoffs. I don't care who's in there.
Yeah,
it's
great.
It's a ton of fun to watch. And you've been an Oklahoma City fan now for a few years, and I know that you keep telling me that I'm stupid, so I'll pick against them, and I'll put I'm going to put Denver back in the finals. That's who I got in the West.
All right, we'll see.
Playing Cleveland. We will see. All right, we'll put a bow on the show. We'll do it next. Tinner Saint, 1080 The Fan.
Crunch Fitness is ready to welcome all with no judgments. Hey, it's Dirt here from my favorite gym. We know that regular physical activity gets you all the good stuff. Decreased stress, lifted mood, lower risk of chronic
The Sinner and the Saint Tailgate with Luke Anderson and Will Darkins on 1080 The Fan.
All right, it's time for What to Watch. Will, what are you watching this weekend?
Oh, I'll watch the dunk contest.
You watch? That's it.
Yeah.
I might tune in to see what the little, what are they playing to 21?
Yeah. See what that little game's all about?
Yeah, well, I'm interested. Who cares? there's some money out there. There's some pride out there. Go out and see if you've got the coaches invested into it. Shaq and Barkley and Kenny and Candace Parker are coaching these teams. So trying to get them riled up. It's 8-on-8. So yeah, let's go. Let's do it. Let's do it. We'll see what happens. Whatever happens, we'll talk about it in a couple weeks. We're going to be off next weekend. Ducks basketball will be on. Will, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. For now, we're done. Bye-bye.
That's the thing.
Did you know that most people wait 6 or 7 years before they buy a new TV? That's a lot of time in front of one TV. So why not get one of the best sets for the next 7 years, like one of the top-rated Samsung, LG, or Sony models? Too expensive? What if you could get up to $1,000 trade-in for your old set? Who would do a stupid deal like this? Right now, at Video Only, you can get big bucks for your old set as a trade-in and a hot price on the new models.